Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name is Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. To my right here is my buddy Shadow the Night Owl. He is the mascot and the spirit animal of the channel. And speaking of my buddy, I made a friend last night, a friend, the toad. And the toads, they squeak a little bit. I wanted to rescue the toad from the street, and so I did. But I did take a couple videos and pictures with the toad before we released him gently back into the nature. But today what we're going to go over is some of the evidence regarding the Tyler Robinson preliminary hearing. Now, I've talked a little bit about this on Facebook, and of course, there's all sorts of controversies because there are some people that think if you believe any of the evidence the prosecution is saying in this case, you're just believing Fed slop, you're an idiot, etc. Now, the big thing that came out yesterday was there was influencers and other reporters saying there was video that showed Tyler Robinson going up there and a shot being fired. Now, hello there, Chatty Cathy. Now, Candace Owens and friends were immediately saying, no, the judge already had said previously when asked there is no video. To which I would say, well, they're asking about a specific video in that case. Now, other people have weighed in on the same thing here too. Now, Lawyer Lee, she goes over this. And again, if you completely took the political side out of this, I think a lot of people would have different opinions. But if you look at the evidence and what the prosecution is thinking, for someone to believe that it's definitely a conspiracy, you have to believe that a lot of people are in on it. You have to believe the college is in on it. Local police is in on it. Trump is in on it. Kash Patel is in on it. Turning Point, Erica Kirk, who else? Israel, Egypt, you name it. There's got to be a lot of people in on it for it to be a reality. But, and again, I think a lot of people, unfortunately, I think they have their minds made up one way or the other. I'm open. If you can show me evidence that shows, oh, yes, this is definitely not Tyler that did it, and he definitely didn't do it, then I hope he gets off. I hope he doesn't get convicted of this. I want justice to be served. I want whoever did it to be found guilty. But I must admit, as I'm looking at the prosecution's case here, I'm looking at the preliminary hearing, and it's just a preliminary hearing. It's not the trial yet. This is just to see if there's enough to take it to trial. That's all it is. But I'm reading through and listening to what the prosecution is saying, and there does seem to be some damning evidence. Now, we'll see what the other side has to say about it. I'll listen to Candace. I'll listen to Baron Coleman. I'll listen to whoever else is saying that this is all out of control. I'm not afraid to listen to anybody. And in fact, I think it's essential to listen to everybody, especially people you disagree with, because if you don't, you're not getting all the information. You're not getting the facts. Now, that being said, even people amongst the right disagree with one another on this. I mean, Nick Fuentes, I watched one of his videos the other day. He completely disagrees with Candace. So what do you make of that? Who's telling the truth? I don't know. So, but Nick did seem to make some good points in that video, although, of course, he was accused of being fed, and of course, he was accused of buying the Fed slop narrative, etc. But we shall see. Time will tell, and we'll see what unfolds here, because I don't have a horse in the race. I mean, I wasn't really that much of a Charlie Kirk fan. I mean, I knew of him, but I wasn't like a religious follower of his or something. But either way, what I kind of think has also happened is people have just cashed in. I think people have cashed in on creating some of these theories, and I'll let you fill in the blank with who you think those people are. But that's what it seems like to me. And there's all too eager of an audience to believe some of those things. I would also tell folks to check out HG Tutors. HG Tutor is a friend of the channel, by the way. Check out his 10-part series on Candace Owens. The 11th episode is the conclusion, but he puts Candace Owens through the tutor scope think he puts Erica Kirk through the Tudor scope too, by the way. Just something to take a look at. Wendy and Jules, how are you both? The images of TR can't positively identify him. Yes, and that is what Lance Twiggs said too. But we shall see, Chatty Cathy. We'll see what some of these things have to say here. And this is going to be a Lawyer Lee video. Now, Candace has been gone. She has been, I don't think she's had a video for 12 days. Baron Coleman, he has been in her stead. I don't know if my followers know Baron Coleman, but Baron Coleman, he's interesting. He's an interesting fellow. He's a lawyer. Also to note, this is the interesting part for the people on the right. Andrew Wilson, the Crucible Andrew Wilson, he doesn't believe Candace's and Ian Carroll's and Baron Coleman's thoughts. He doesn't agree, which is interesting enough. And Andrew Wilson is probably one of the best debaters on the right. Interesting to note, eh? Also, she's dealing with the defamation, I think, as well, isn't she? Isn't that France defamation thing going on with the Macrons? But let's see what Lawyer Lee has to say. The video this is about is this a secret confession here? Let's go over it. Let's see what they say. Let me change my settings here too. And Shadow wants me to remind you all to like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button. Leave your DNA of choice on the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel if you're not already. As always, super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships, great ways to support the channel. They help me pay for Shadow the Night Owl's soy-free hoodie snacks. Shadow and I are very grateful for all of the support that we've gotten so far. And tell a few friends about the flock of black sheep here. Hello there, Laura. Well, this is all just the preliminary hearing, Chatty Cathy. It's all just to see if there's enough evidence to even take it to trial. And at this point, I would be pretty surprised if they don't take it, if they don't have enough to take it to trial. Now, that doesn't speak to if the defense team takes a plea deal. That's a different story. But I'm pretty sure it would make it to trial. But let's see.
Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Well, today there were 3 seconds, actually yesterday, but we spent most of the day today talking about 3 seconds, but they are so important. I know this may seem obscure, but these 3 seconds tell us something critically.
And by the way, pay attention to the purely true crime people, how they talk about this case, versus how the political people talk about this case. Who are the true crime people I'm talking about? Lawyer Lee, Brian Etten. I don't know if Tony Bruschi's covered this yet, but Law and Crime Network, the ones that we go over normally. Pay attention to how they go over it and compare and contrast it with how the political sides go over it. Pay attention to what the differences are. What do they leave out? What do they add? Where are the lies of omission? Where do you think they might be trying to manipulate you? Just good questions to ask yourself, right? Nothing wrong with asking questions, as our friend Candace would say, right?
Important. It tells us that there is one document that Tyler Robinson's team desperately does not want the world to see. It's a note that Tyler Robinson left behind before the shooting.
Oh, and by the way, as you all could have told so far, I have been doing more interviews lately. I'm still going to go live too, of course, but I'm just working with what the YouTube algorithm and friends is working on me with. So we're kind of going with the flow. I won't stop going live or anything, but as you can see, I've done more interviews, and I'm going to get here's who I got lined up. Dr. Gary Brucato. I'm going to try to reach out to him. Lucas Bean, Miss Kim's friend. Robin Dreek from Tony Bruschi's show. Another person that Dr. Robert Plomans someone he's mentored, a recommendation from him. Dr. Robert Plomin, he talks about genes. And who else? And other experts on psychopaths. Dr. Gherkin is the female psychopath expert, but I'm in talks to get Jennifer Young. She's the co-author of Women Who Love Psychopaths. It would be nice to get her perspective too, to kind of balance it out. And we got Dr. Salerno and Dr. Lieberman. That's going to be July 24th. And then I'm going to be a guest on Chelsea Brooke Cole's show. That's next week. I don't know when she'll release it, but those are all the things on the agenda right now to keep you all updated.
According to the prosecution says it's essentially a confession. The defense knows that if it comes in, it's going to be devastating evidence. And the judge ruled that while the words on this note could be read aloud in court, that the image of the note itself could not be shown. And it would not be allowed to be shown on the live stream. It could be seen in the courtroom, but not on the live stream. But yesterday, Court TV accidentally showed this note anyway. 3.5 seconds.
Accidentally. And I think the judge even reprimanded him for it too.
And what happened next nearly changed everything about the case, about whether or not we got to see the case, because the defense asked for the judge to ban television cameras from the courtroom, not just for the rest of the preliminary hearing. The big request they had was for the entire trial. In other words, we wouldn't be able to watch this. It would not come across YouTube or across any channel you could see unless you were sitting in the courtroom. So all of that for 3.5 seconds of showing this document. We're going to talk about what is so important about this document, that it was worth the fight that we had today, because we know the words. We know what the document says. So we're going to talk about all of that and what it shows us about where the defense is headed and what this means for the rest of the case. So I am actually going to play for you the part where they show the document, but I am going to blur it out. Now, it's available online in the original version. You can read that. If you pause it, you can read it, but I'm not going to do that because the judge had actually asked everybody not to do that. So that part, I'll blur it out. You'll see the whole thing. To give you a little background about what was happening, this had to do with testimony by the roommate / lover of Tyler Robinson, whose name was Lance Twiggs. And Lance Twiggs said that he got a message from Tyler Robinson telling him to go look for a note. And he went.
Oh, wow, Laura. That's how old my grandmother is, 97. But Shadow and I want to wish Laura and Adam's Laura's husband, I'm presuming. We want to send them good vibes because Adam's grandmother, 97 and not doing well. So Flock of Black Sheep, please make sure you send our friend, the mod, Laura. Shadow and I love you, as do the rest of the Flock of Black Sheep here too. Good vibes. And yeah, and I mean, when it comes to this kind of thing, there really is just not much to be said, right? It's like, if someone passes away, what do you say? I think the best thing to do is listen and be present with someone. That's really one of the best things you can do. Just an FYI, if you know someone that ever loses someone. But yes, good vibes. Shadow and I are sending to you and to Adam, Laura, and to his grandmother.
And found this note, and it was underneath something that he read the note, and he was supposed to destroy it, but instead he decided to take a photograph of it, which was on his phone. So law enforcement found it on his phone. Now, when they went to look for this note, it had been burned. It was no longer available. And so we saw the burned note, and the judge had ruled at this point that the actual note itself, the note that the prosecution says is a straight up confession, that wouldn't be shown on the live stream. The words was not the issue. It was not to be shown on the live stream. So prosecutors say that the fact that this was found burned and the fact that it was written tells us that the defendant, Tyler Robinson, actually committed this crime. And
so I don't know if you caught that, but she had said this note was burned and discovered. So it implies that Tyler Robinson or somebody, they knew this was not good. They knew this is not something they wanted to be found, which shows some intentionality and knowing what they did. But let's see how it unfolds.
Secondly, that it's evidence that Tyler Robinson planned this crime, planned it enough that he could write his roommate / lover, Lance Twiggs, and say, go find this note that I left there before I left this morning. So knowing, in other words, the prosecution is going to say that he was going to commit this murder. So the information in it is really important for the prosecution to show that this was intentional, knowing that Tyler Robinson planned this in advance. It wasn't a sudden thing. He knew in advance he was going to do this, and he set out to make sure it happened. The fact that he could leave a note in advance proves that. It did occur to me, I haven't checked to make sure that everybody could hear me. we have a little trouble with that every now and again, as you know. Okay, good. We are good. By the way, would you please hit the like button? It will really help YouTube know we're here, we're live, and I would appreciate it if you.
Shadow wants me to remind you all to like the video as well. And this is Lawyer Lee. I think Lawyer Lee is pretty reasonable. We haven't gone over her for a while. She reminds me a little bit of the Emily Show. I'm also a fan of the Emily Show. So is Shadow.
Would. If you haven't subscribed to, please do that. We would love to have you see more videos and come visit us more here on the channel. Okay, so the prosecution wants to argue this note was left before Tyler Robinson left to go and kill Charlie Kirk, and he knew in advance he was going to do this. The third thing I think they'll argue from it is if he's busy writing this note and then burns it, then that suggests he knew that he was doing something he shouldn't have done. It's consciousness of guilt. He's trying to hide the evidence about what he's done. Now, irony of irony. So despite all of the argument we had today, literally hours today were spent to what this 3 seconds when Court TV showed this little blurb where you could see the document. I'll show it to you. You'll see what happened. So, but ironically, we actually know the words. Here are the key words. I can read them to you. Luna, which was apparently a nickname for Lance Twiggs. If you are reading this per my text, then I am so sorry. I left the house this morning on a mission and sent an auto text. I'm likely dead or facing a lengthy prison sentence. Obviously, you can see where the prosecution is getting.
So do you hear what he said in the note? If you see this, I'm likely dead or facing a lengthy prison sentence. And again, if that's a real note, real evidence, I mean, that's a pretty damning thing to say, no? I mean, I'm curious what people would spin it as. Well, I'm sure they'll find something, but again, if you're just looking at this evidence from an objective lens, you haven't listened to anything Candace or Baron Coleman have said the last 10 months or Ian Carroll, what would you think? What would you think?
The idea that this is a confession. Why else would he maybe be dead or facing a lengthy prison sentence? So we'll read more from this. I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I took it. Very, very specific. Not just an intent to commit a crime, but an intent to kill.
So the note even said, apparently, I had the chance to take out Charlie Kirk, and I took it. And again, if the note's real, what are people going to say about this? They're going to say it's fake. right? I guess that's what they would say, right? Oh, this is fake, fabricated, false confession. He's a patsy.
Take out a specific person. That feeds into the prosecution claim that there should be an enhancement here because this wasn't just murder. It was murder for a political reason. Okay, so, and then it says, I wish we could have lived in a world where this was not necessary. Please try and find joy in this life. I love you always, Tyler. Even signed then. Those are the words. Those words have actually been used in court. They were used in the preliminary hearing. They were filed initially along with the information when the case was begun against Tyler Robinson. They're not secret, but you will see what kind of mayhem occurred when there was an actual playing of this, when it was shown during the court. So the defense wanted to keep the world from seeing this document. Their theory that they explained to the court was it might prejudice future jurors if they saw this, and the judge granted their request, said, yes, this is like a confession. I don't want future jurors to see it. So it may seem like, well, this is kind of dancing on the head of a pin. If you can see you can't see the note, but you can hear everything that it says. What's the difference, really?
And I hear what lawyer Lee is saying here. And this is the other part about evidence in the public. If enough evidence gets out, it becomes harder and harder to find an untainted jury because you can't have a juror that has been going over the case and knows all about it. They need to be objective. The more information that's out, the harder that is to achieve.
World sees a photo of the note, if it just hears it, why does it really matter? But let's take a look at when the very moment when this all went down. Now, we'll start with the little context where you can see that the court is being shown the burned note. So, and then, as I mentioned, it had been burned by the time law enforcement got there.
So this is the court in the preliminary hearing. They're being shown the burned note. Let's see what we think about it.
Give it just a second. It'll come.
Exhibit 24.
Yes, I do.
It looks like as to the evidence tag, it's actually upside down. Is that right?
Yes.
Does it look like there's any writings on that note, on that burnt paper?
Yes.
You'll see it.
Can you point that out for the judge where the writing is?
Yep.
And describe what you're pointing at, kind of the general location on the image.
Yeah. So the part that I'm pointing out is the paper that you can still see the lines in them, and as well as some handwriting as well to the edge, the left edge of that piece of paper.
So what's going to happen next is the prosecutor is going to very suddenly ask for a side-by-side of the burned note and the note before it was burned. But it's not going to be totally clear what the prosecutor is asking for. So you're going to see the moment, and then you're going to see how everyone in the court reacts.
Okay, so apparently there's a unburned note, the pre-burned note, and then the post-burned note. And the pre-burned note must be able to be legible. Now, I wonder how there was ever a picture of the pre-burned note. That would be my question. How did they get that picture? Who took that picture? Who burned the evidence afterwards? How did that work? What was the timeline like in that instance? I don't know.
To this, all of this happened yesterday, but today is when all hell broke loose and everybody argued over it. So this is what happened yesterday.
You also observed the image of a note that was recovered from Lance Twig's phone.
Yes.
And I'd like to show you side by side Exhibit 24.
I blurted out.
And there on the left, you see Exhibit, well, that's good. There on the left, we see Exhibit 24. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And on the right, you
That
see.
was it, by the way.
On the
I'll
right,
show you
it's
more.
24. On the left, it's 16.
Let me stop you, Mr. McBride. I'm not sure. Is this being broadcast?
Let's take that down.
All right.
Exhibit 24, thank you, Your Honor. Excuse me, Exhibit 16.3. I would move to publish Exhibit 16.3 and 24 side by side. I think they're currently on the council monitors.
So 16.3 has already been admitted.
Without electronic.
And I don't remember the court's order if this was to be captured by electronic media or not.
No, it was not.
Okay.
Is that does that comport with defense's memory as well?
It does.
All right. So 16.3 was published to the courtroom, but not to be captured by the media.
Very
So
well.
as it's, and what is your request?
To comply with court's order.
All right. So 16.3 and Exhibit 24 may be published side by side only to the courtroom itself, but not on to be captured by the camera.
Have you also?
Okay, so we're gonna watch that moment again. It was literally 3.5 seconds. The judge actually went back and measured it. So what happens is we'll watch it again, and you can kind of focus in on that 3.5 seconds. I'm just going to play that. But what happens is the image gets thrown up on the screen, and the court TV camera person says, I mean, they don't say it out loud, but you can see the thought process like, whoa, was that supposed to be shown? And they immediately move the camera off it. You just see it kind of blur as.
So the judge didn't want certain things reaching the public, apparently. And that's why Lawyer Lee is talking about dancing on the head of a pin. And again, the preliminary hearing has been streamed on Law and Crime Network. But there's rules about cell phones and other electronic devices. That's one. Another thing is they have rules about what gets shown, which is interesting as well.
It moves past it. And so that's why it was shown very briefly. And it's several seconds more before anyone else in the courtroom reacts. And the only other person who does react is the judge. And the judge says, hey, wait a minute, is that supposed to be shown, and ask some questions around it? And everybody looks at it and says, okay, is that supposed to be shown? They decide, no, it's not. And then they move on. There is no objection from the defense. So the only comment made on it is from the judge. The judge says, okay, let's get that down. And the reason that's pretty important is because the defense the next day is going to raise this issue, and the prosecution is going to say, well, you said nothing about this yesterday. So let's watch this happen again. You can see how quickly Court TV moves off it. This is a real short clip.
So observed the image of a note that was recovered from Lance Twig's phone.
Yes.
And I'd like to show you side by side Exhibit 24.
So there's a note, but it's all blurry.
There it is. Do you see how fast the Court TV operator moves off that? Just really fast. They're like, whoa. And to me, that was pretty exceptional, because that is a hard thing to notice in the moment when you're busy doing your job of doing the camera and so forth, to suddenly realize, wait a minute, that document isn't allowed. The prosecutor just popped it up. It wasn't really scheduled or planned. And the court and the camera person has to react really quickly and figure out this is inappropriate and get off it. The defense has a big.
And to be clear, to speak about the elephant in the room, the reason why there's so many conspiracy theories, if you want to call them that, about Charlie Kirk's death is Charlie Kirk was, before his death, kind of becoming a little more Israel critical. Now, he was not against them yet. He had threatened to be. He said, I'll be forced to leave the cause, but he was certainly becoming more Israel critical. And that's the birth of the conspiracy theories. People are saying, well, that shows you Mossad probably did it, right? Because Charlie was becoming Israel critical, and he was threatening to leave the cause. Now, granted, let's look at some context. What did Charlie Kirk say during the 12-day war last summer? He was against that, by the way. He was against it before it occurred. But then when it occurred, he had said, oh, all right, well, we have to trust Trump. Same thing with the Epstein files. He was all about getting the Epstein files out. Then time comes, we need to trust Trump. So when push came to shove, Charlie Kirk would fall in line. And that's one of the reasons why he actually would get in a lot of fights. And Charlie Kirk didn't like Nick Fuentes, because Nick Fuentes was the king of Israel critical. And if not worse, according to some, right? But that was the dynamic at play. But that's the birth. The birth of it all is from that.
Big point, though. Here is what they say the next day, because everybody's had time to think about it overnight. The judge said it was in his mind all night, really bothering him that this had leaked out. So what's so important about this, though, is the way the defense reacts and why. That's what I want you to think about and what we're going to talk about. Why are they so upset about this particular document being shown to the world? It says something really important about something different about this case from just about any other case we've ever covered. I will address all of that at the end.
Without belaboring the point, the court can imagine our concern that the media and the state who control this exhibit and the publication of this exhibit in the courtroom, as per the court's orders, failed to comply with this court's orders after all of the effort that we made and the court made to make sure that the court balanced everybody's rights, including the rights that we're concerned about, which are Mr. Robinson's. No doubt the counsel for the media and counsel for the state will say that it was a very, very brief mistake, that it was corrected as soon as they realized the.
So Dana says that it was Lance that testified that I keep on seeing TR and I'm thinking Teddy Roosevelt. But no, Tyler Robinson is TR in this context. But Lance also had said apparently that allegedly Tyler Robinson said he regretted what he did, that he regretted doing it. So some people were saying in terms of the video, Lance did not confirm it was Tyler Robinson. But then on the other hand, Lance said, oh yes, Tyler wrote that note. And oh yeah, Tyler said that he regretted doing what he did. So doesn't seem like he's got a problem ratting him out, really.
Error, but it's done. It's out there. It's photographed. I'm informed secondhand that if I want to buy this image and maybe even have it framed and put behind museum quality glass, I can do so and put it up in my office. Obviously, I'm not going to do that. But my point is, it doesn't matter how long the court's order was violated. When we live in an electronic world, it's done and it's permanent. And we just wanted the record to be clear that we're concerned that the court's orders have been violated, and they've been violated with respect to an order that was specifically designed to protect Mr. Robinson's right to a fair trial.
That's a really important point, because the defense is right. Once this is out in public, you can't unring the bell. You can't pull it back. Once it appears on the screen and there can be a screenshot of it, then that's it. It's available to the public. But what I think really what I want to focus on is what this tells us about the defense position. Clearly, the defense believes that the less the public knows about the case, the better for Tyler Robinson. They see the TV as an enemy. Now, having us watch this on YouTube, that's bad. That would show, what it does show us is that the defense is concerned about these admissions. They are concerned that this is powerful evidence, that the jury may buy it, and that having the jury see this in advance could taint the jury. So in other words, the notes and the note and the statements made to Lance Twiggs, to family members, to friends by Tyler Robinson. This suggests that the defense believes that is the most important evidence, or at least extremely important evidence that's going to be very difficult to overcome, that they are concerned about it, and they think having this information out there may prevent them from getting jurors who are fair, because people will conclude based on these that Tyler Robinson is in fact guilty and has admitted it. So let's listen to a little bit more.
I think at the outset, it's important to recognize that everyone's doing their best here.
And let me go ahead. This is the prosecution responding. This is what the prosecution had to say and argued, look, everybody's trying. This is a very fluid environment.
And the chat is also saying that Lance took the picture of that note before it was burned. Just so you know.
Not easy, and we're doing our best. And by the way, thank you, Lenora Gray. I really appreciate that super chat and your nice comment.
And I agree. I think if you're just looking at the evidence that's being presented in this preliminary hearing, it does seem pretty damning to Tyler Robinson. And again, that's an opinion that if you share it in certain places, they will tell you, oh, you're brain dead. You're brain dead. You're believing the Fed slop. And they'll say you're just an idiot. But it's like, I would say to those people, how do you know you are not the one being manipulated? So this is what Shadow and I do. And we got in some big tussles about this on Facebook, of course. On a side note about Facebook, there's a lot of nasty people on Facebook. Very openly racist people on Facebook too. That's kind of surprised me because they're not anonymous. Like, these people aren't anonymous. And they have no problem dropping some N-words and some other racial slurs. It's pretty wild. But what was I saying? So I forget what I was even saying now. Oh, that's what you do. So you ask questions. Ask them questions about their perspective. Okay, why do you think this? How do you know you're not being manipulated? And many times they can't even answer the basic questions. The position can't even withstand the smallest bit of scrutiny and pushback. Now, the things I'm seeing them hold on to, some of them. Oh, 30-06 wouldn't do that. 30-06 would blow his head off. To which, if you actually objectively look for some research. Now, apparently it was a soft tip bullet, not a hollow tip, but a soft tip. And there's other people that have been in the Navy SEALs. They have said on X and other places that, yeah, bullets that are especially soft tip, they can do different things in bodies. When they hit bones, when they hit other pieces of flesh, they can do different things in different scenarios. I could see that. And then the other thing I'm seeing is saying, oh, you mean to tell me he took apart the gun right afterwards? It's like, well, that's not quite what happened. People are running with that. I think the most he did was unscrew a couple screws. Right? Those are the two big things I'm seeing people scrutinize with the evidence. But wow, and Dana, I'll be curious your thoughts on that. Right on, some way. Well, my Facebook is different because I have my biggest following is on Facebook, believe it or not. I have over 200,000 people that follow me there. But it's different. It's very different than YouTube. YouTube is a community of people. It's actually much more pleasant for me on YouTube. Facebook's a different beast because a lot of the people that come out of the woodwork on this stuff, they're people I don't even know. People call me slurs, F words, homosexual slurs, and you name it, they're doing it. Why? Because they don't care. They just think, oh, this guy disagrees. He's the worst of the worst. I think Tyler did, Child of God. Tyler did. I like animals as well. Did I tell you, wow, that I made a friend toad last night? That was pretty cool. Chatty Cathy asked Dana, what they saw was so severe that a rifle shot from where they found the weapon and cartridge could not physically do the damage. Dana says they have the casing out of the chamber and the other shells that was in it. They were engraved. Somebody says, oh gosh, I look for you, but I'm not really as consistent with that than YouTube. All good, Someway. I mean, I'm there. The Facebook algorithm is very different, where sometimes it'll let you go viral, and then other times it says no. We'll show your stuff to nothing. YouTube, ultimately, it's better. It's better in terms of consistency and value. But value, keep in mind, is a different proposition than money sometimes. I've seen some people make a small fortune on Facebook, and it probably wasn't deserved, right? They just posted silliness and they hit it rich. They got lucky. And sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But a few years ago, for example, my buddy was posting pictures of cars. I'd be like, heart for Maserati, like for Porsche. And he made $130,000 for the year doing that. Different variations of the same thing. And this is not a lie. Like, he did. He was going viral every post, and he killed it. Now, it died. It went away because it was kind of it was like a glitch in the matrix, is what I call it. And then there was another woman. What she was doing was she was posting pictures from Pinterest about the indoors of homes, like an HGTV magazine or Home Goods. And she was making $10,000 a month just posting pictures she found on Pinterest. She didn't even take the pictures. She posted them. $10,000 a month. Now, is that fair? Of course it's not fair. But does it happen? Yes, it does. Now, you can't do it that way anymore. But my point in even talking about that is sometimes you can be in the right place at the right time and you stumble across, by accident, a small gold mine. That can happen. And my other friend, who I actually interviewed, he did really well too. He almost made $100,000. I interviewed him actually on this channel. And he was just posting humorous memes, humorous little videos, and coming up with his own caption. He killed it. He killed it doing that. But of course, it's kind of like a gimmick. And then it finally ran out. It expired. But it does happen. A few years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago now, wow. Facebook's been, I have been for 3 years now. 3, a little more. Miss Kim. Miss Kim says, stay out of that Facebook trash box. I wondered why ordinary people on Facebook did that. That is why. Now, granted, not everyone is going to make a killing on it. And many people, they're not consistent enough. And so it just doesn't happen. But sometimes people get lucky. And then they're consistent and they do well.
The court is, I know the clerks are, I think the media is, we certainly are, and the defense is. Camera captured this for approximately 2 seconds. The camera operator, I think, acting in diligence and appropriateness, immediately panned as soon as she realized that there was a new exhibit on the screen. The court took it down. As soon as they realized that an exhibit was on the screen, I immediately instructed my paralegal to take it down, and it was. Defense, I think everyone involved here made quick and appropriate efforts as soon as they realized the mistake had been made to remedy and mitigate that issue. Moreover, I do want to say this exhibit was read into the record. It was allowed to be read into the record earlier. It is also in an earlier pleading, which is the information. This portion of that exhibit, I understand, is in the information. And it is largely cumulative of Exhibit 16 and 16.1, which were previously admitted into evidence and published to the media.
So one of the things that I think is so interesting, it may seem small, just 3.5 seconds, one document, but this reveals so much about what both sides think and what they're going to argue. And what it tells us about the prosecution here is that they believe the more they get out there, the better. We have seen cases, we have covered cases here on the channel where the prosecution is trying to keep the media out, and the prosecution is actively working to argue that the media shouldn't be allowed in, courtrooms should not have TV, should not be broadcast. This is not what's happening here, very much not. The prosecution is pushing this, is let's let the TV in, let's let the camera in. And I think that there's a good reason for that. I think, first of all, it shows us that the prosecution is pretty confident in the facts it's developed, confident enough that it's willing to bring TVs in and let those see what's going on. Secondly, it shows us the prosecution, I think anyway, is concerned about the conspiracy theories that are out there, because there is no case, at least in America right now, where there are more conspiracy theories than there are about the Charlie Kirk case. It has become huge on X and other social media platforms where people talk about other theories than what the prosecution has put forward. The prosecution is trying to get evidence out there to tamp that down before a jury gets selected. Both sides are in a battle to get fair jurors based on the potential contamination by social media. So at this point, the media also got up. The media was represented by an attorney who got up and argued and said, and I do agree with this, the camera operator did the best they could in a very difficult, awkward situation.
At that point, there was what I think is a useful practice by the camera operator to wait a beat, because sometimes mistakes do happen, right? In that case, though, that was authorized. So the camera then panned to the screen, which is set up specifically for the camera operator to be able to capture that. Examination on that exhibit began. Then, because the examination seemed to call for that juxtaposition, without much warning for anyone involved, the previous exhibit that was intended to be juxtaposed was placed on the screen. From, I think, a observer's view who didn't know where the testimony was going without warning. The camera operator, I think quite astutely, within seconds, recognized this is a different exhibit, and recalling the court's prior order, recognized I should pan off, and did within seconds. I think at the time that was happening, the court also caught that and said, let's not do that. Now, and that was the end of it. I think the 2 seconds is about right. I don't want to minimize that. I understand the point that Mr. Novak is making.
And that's the one thing I do appreciate about Charlie Kirk is, even if you don't agree with everything he said, I do think he had integrity. I don't think he was just a straight up grifter. I think he was trying to have integrity. That's why he wrote to Netanyahu and he was saying, hey, dude, I was trying to defend your cause here in Israel, but you're making it very hard for me to do so. And you have to work with me here because we're losing the youth. The college youth, they are not really big supporters of Israel anymore. Not many people in America are big supporters of Israel anymore. And Charlie Kirk knew that because Charlie Kirk's finger was on the pulse of the younger people. So he wrote to Netanyahu and he said, dude, we got to figure something out here. So I do think, just like and again, some people call Charlie Kirk all sorts of names. You won't hear me doing that. I think he seemed like a genuine guy to me.
We are operating in some ways on high wire. And we are trying to place as many nets as we can. And all the parties are working together to try to do that. But in the age in which we live, one of the challenges is that sometimes when something like that is placed on a live screen, someone can screenshot it. And like Mr. Novak said, if they want to put that for sale on the internet, then they can. I do want, without going too far into the evidence, to note not only that several lines of this exhibit are available publicly in the information, but that the full text, every word of that exhibit is contained in a search warrant, in this case, that was initially filed on September 17th, was held for 6 months, as search warrants often are, but then on March 17th was released in full. On page 7 of that search warrant is the full text of this exhibit. I don't want to suggest that anybody gets the right to say, well, I think it's public. The court has said don't show it in the screen, but since I think it is, we'll just come back later on and tell the court it's not a big deal because it's already public. That's not how it works. If we say we think it's in the public, the court says, I understand that, but I'm going to make an order. That order should be adhered to.
I thought that was a really good argument because he basically says to the judge, here are the reasons why this really isn't that big a deal, but that doesn't undercut your order. That's a pretty good argument, I think. So what he's saying is this is already in the public domain. It's already literally every word on here is already in the public eye because it was originally filed and it became public in March of this year. So there's no secret information that was leaked by showing this document. It's not something that's going to that is suddenly going to enter the public and now be discussed. Nobody had any idea about it beforehand. So I think that's really important, the fact that it already was out there. It wasn't something that would undermine more than had already been done. That means that even though a mistake was made by the court TV camera person, and to be honest, I don't even really see that because I don't see how humanly they could have reacted any faster than they did.
So again, for whatever reason, the judge didn't want that part being aired. This part's allowed to be aired, but that note, they didn't want them to be able to do that. And again, maybe to not taint the jury, but that's why lawyer Lee said they're dancing on the head of a pin here. Okay, so there's certain things they don't want out, etc., but other things are allowed out. It's interesting.
Than anyone else in the courtroom did. So I personally did feel like they moved very quickly, but you're going to see that and I want to show you one more thing that the media said. Let's go ahead and hear that.
The media is fully bought in. I, as one of the attorneys and the other attorneys for the media coalition, are fully bought in on a goal to make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen. Of course, I understand Mr. Novak and the defense's need to make a record and make an objection. And I also recognize and appreciate and understand the court's role in trying to make sure it imposes whatever sort of direction, caution, sanction, response that it believes is needed to make sure that its orders are recognized and adhered to. And I want the court to know that we will understand that and will comply with whatever it is the court orders.
Thank you.
All right. So the judge took all. So what we've learned about the media's position is they will do whatever it takes to remain in the courtroom. They want to cover this. The people present in the courtroom are there because they want to cover this, and media outside the courtroom as well. Like here on our channel, we want to be able to see what happens in the courtroom. So the judge took a break to consider all of this and said, this is super important. And here is why.
When it comes to constitutional matters and balancing constitutional rights and transparency, this court will take the necessary time to make sure it's given the weight it deserves, and it is deserving of every moment that has been spent.
So unlike many judges that we've seen, and this is pretty revealing about the judge here, unlike many judges in the cases that we've covered, this judge has really bent over backwards to protect the rights of the defendant. This is the second time with very strong rulings in favor of the defendant. And this shows us how conscientious the judge is about wanting to protect the defendant and the defendant's constitutional rights. I'm impressed by that. I think that's pretty impressive. The judge, I don't necessarily agree. We'll get to that in just a minute, but I'll just say I'm very impressed by the judge's approach here. So the judge came back after taking this break and made findings of fact. Here is what the judge said.
Exhibit 24 was displayed on the monitor visible to the media camera. Exhibit 16 was displayed on all monitors and appeared on the live stream for approximately 3.5 seconds. The camera operator redirected camera before any party called attention to the display of Exhibit 16. Approximately 16 seconds later, the court observed the image and stated, "Let me stop you, Mr. McBride. I'm not sure. Is this being broadcast?" Mr. McBride responded, "Let's take that down." The full text of Exhibit 16 had previously been made public through a search warrant that was publicly available on or before April 2026. The portion displayed on the monitors did not contain the full note and consisted of approximately 78 words. Approximately 15 of those words were included in the information filed on September 16, 2026. In addition, the full note was read into the record during the preliminary hearing. The court previously ordered that Exhibit 16 be admitted into evidence and permitted its display within the courtroom, but prohibited its publication through the camera used for the live stream.
So the judge has said, okay, look, I do find that this shouldn't have been shown, and it was. And I also find that everybody did know this, and the words were already out there in the public. So the defense asked the judge to exclude all electronic media for any proceeding at all. That tells you a great deal about what the defense is thinking. They want to limit the reach of the media into this case. That video runs around the world faster even than print now. It's even more persuasive, and the defense doesn't believe it's going to help them. They don't believe it's their ally at all. And that is something they don't want to happen. So here's what they initially asked. It's very broad, very broad.
We're going to renew our request to exclude all electronic media coverage from all future proceedings. That was our motion docketed at number 305, and that included video cameras, still photography, and audio. This is the second time that the court's orders concerning the scope of electronic media coverage have been violated. I'm a baseball fan, and I just don't think the court needs to wait for the third strike. 2 strikes is enough.
So you can see that's what the defendant wants. The defendant's top choice is no media coverage at all, at least no electronic media coverage. That includes photographs, that includes audio. People can come in and take notes. Reporters can go back and write up articles, but nothing more immediate than that. And they do not want to feed public interest in the case. And social media can do that, and access can do that. So there's an element of that that is real. There's a realistic concern that they could end up with a tainted jury before they even walk into the courtroom.
Correct. And that's one of the reasons for the concern by the judge, right? The more people that see this stuff, the more likely there's a tainted jury, the harder it will be to have a fair and impartial jury.
A jury that's heard about this and already made up its mind. But there are other ways to handle that in terms of asking the jurors questions before you even get started. And it's on the one hand, there's realism to that, but on the other, it's a position of weakness because it suggests that the defense believes the more people know about this case, the more it hurts the defense. That they did offer an alternative if the judge wouldn't just in a blanket way exclude the media entirely, no electronic media at all, not even audio, then here was their proposed alternative.
The issue is when the court issues an order, everybody must comply with it, and there are reasons for the order. And the reasons, as this court stated, are to protect Mr. Robinson's right to a fair trial. Or as an alternative, the court prohibit any further electronic media coverage of the preliminary hearing, which includes September 1st.
So their fallback position is, okay, maybe the judge isn't going to say no electronic media at any point, but let's at least keep the media out during the rest of this preliminary hearing and when we have our arguments on September 1st, our arguments before the court. Honestly, I think this makes no sense as a request because at this point in the proceedings, everything has been broadcast up until now on court TV, and there's only one witness left, and that's a witness being called by the defense. So this is basically saying, Judge, here's our request. Let's televise everything that helps the other side. And now when we get our chance to present our side, we're just going to cut. We think you should cut off the television and not allow anyone to know our side and our argument. The defense is clearly thinking any publicity is bad. But in this case, I think it's kind of, I think that it's not even fair to them if what happens is media gets cut off now, nobody gets to see the defense position. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense. It's also ironic because the defense is very intentionally using the media to affirmatively get its case out there. Now, if you watched over the past few days, you saw the prosecutor object over and over again that the defense was going into way too much detail with the witnesses. It was basically the defense team was doing a full cross-examination when the only issue here is whether or not there's enough evidence, enough probable cause to bind this over to allow an actual trial in front of a real jury. It's not a question of guilt or innocence. It's a lot smaller than that in terms of what the judge has to decide. And so the prosecutor said, all this stuff is irrelevant. They should stop asking about this. And the idea being what the defense was doing was trying to get their argument in front of the world, in front of the media. So they knew that it was important enough. There would not have been a reason really for them to ask some of these questions or go into some of the weaknesses around, for example, DNA evidence or the ballistics evidence. So, and there is a sizable online group.
I like what Sweet Caroline just did. Sweet Caroline sending Kathy get better tooth vibes. Shadow approves that message because, as Miss Kim said, dental issues, any kind of infections in the head, can be dangerous. Tooth pains can be a sensitive tooth, maybe from grinding, could be a gum or tooth abscess, could be, what else? A cracked tooth, cavities. You never know. But usually tooth pain means there's something. So, amen. And thank you very much, Sweet Caroline and the Flock of Black Sheep, for the super chat. Shadow and I always appreciate it. All of the super chats, they help pay for Shadow the Night Owls, my buddy here. Soy Freeze Hootie Snacks. He's very hormone and testosterone conscious after all.
That is concerned about whether Tyler Robinson is a fall guy. And obviously, the defense has considered that. They want information to be out there that will present their side. But at the same time, they clearly don't think that's sufficient. They believe that overall media in the case hurts them. They've obviously made that choice. Now, the media, of course, argued to stay in the case. Here's what they said.
We believe that the procedures the court currently has in place, even if they don't, every moment of every hearing, deliver the result that we are intending to deliver. Those processes are working.
The judge looks like Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards for anyone who has seen that movie. You see him? Look at him in the background there. From a distance, he looks like Hans Landa, Colonel Hans Landa.
I don't believe that a further adjustment, much less a sanction, much less a revisitation of something that says let's keep every photographer, every camera out of this courtroom for every proceeding. In light of the court's well-reasoned and exhaustive rulings after long briefing on all of this, the court is currently balancing these interests correctly, and we therefore ask the court to allow the parties to recognize that the time we're dedicating this morning represents a reiteration of the importance of these principles.
We'll stop there. So, and I want to say, first of all, thank you, Mama Pinks, for the super chat. Much appreciated. And I agree with you. I thought it was great that the media had an attorney there who could present and argue these matters to the judge. And furthermore, I thought the lawyer was really good. I thought he did a great job with doing that. And it is a fine line. And
all right. So now what I'm going to do now, Long Cry Network had 7 interesting things that we're going to go over. or 7 shocking moments, as they'll say.
Needs. Take your business.
And then Lance replies, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" And Tyler says, "I am, I'm sorry."
Tyler Robinson, the young man accused of assassinating Charlie Kirk at a Utah college, sat pretty quietly in a courtroom this week as prosecutors laid out critical pieces of alleged evidence against him at a very important preliminary hearing. And if this case goes to trial, he's staring down the death penalty.
He started crying a little bit and said he wishes he hadn't done it.
From testimony.
So that's Lance Twiggs. And he said he started crying. He's talking about Tyler. He started crying and said he wished he didn't do it. So that's his boyfriend. And that's what he's saying Tyler said. I mean, if there was anyone who would want to protect him, wouldn't it be Lance here?
From Robinson's alleged lover to details about those engravings found on bullet casings, a demand from Charlie Kirk's widow, DNA evidence, all of this. We are going to cover it all. We're going to analyze.
Yes, make sure you hit the like button, folks, because likes are free. Spank that like button and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Subscribing is also free.
Some of the biggest moments from the days-long hearings and ask the question, is it enough for this case to move forward towards trial? And has enough been shown to dispel potential conspiracy theories? Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. This is one of the most high-profile cases in the country right now. A judge is hearing evidence against Tyler Robinson, the 23-year-old accused of shooting conservative activist Charlie Kirk in the neck, killing him. This happened last September at Utah Valley University, where Kirk was hosting an event for his organization, Turning Point USA. And now all this time later, months later, we are finally getting a glimpse at some of the evidence against Robinson as part of a days-long preliminary hearing. And this is where the judge will decide whether there is enough there, whether there is sufficient evidence, whether there is probable cause to support the charges to take Robinson to trial. Because prosecutors have announced that he will face the death penalty if he's convicted. And simultaneously, there is something else happening that I want to keep a careful eye on. Transparency. Is enough being shown to the media, to the public, to dispel all of those conspiracy theories out there about who killed Charlie Kirk? You know exactly what I'm talking about, what you're seeing online. Now, in a minute, I'm going to bring on attorney Rich Schoenstein. He's going to help me break down some of the biggest moments from this prelim, but I got to quickly get you caught up on how we even got here. Okay. So Charlie Kirk was sitting underneath this white TP USA tent on September 10th, 2025 in a large open area of the Utah Valley campus in Orem. Thousands of people had gathered to hear him debate people in the crowd about, politics, social issues. But during one of those questions, a gunshot rang out. Gunshot hit Kirk, sparked pandemonium. You know the videos. I'm sure you've seen them. He was rushed to a hospital. He didn't survive. He left behind his wife, Erica Kirk, and 2 children. In the panic after that shot rang out, officers and security personnel, they clamored to figure out where this shot had come from, if anyone else was injured, whether the shooter was still on the campus. And during this week's preliminary hearing, a former Utah Valley University police officer, Christopher Bagley, testified about what he saw.
On that day,
What do we have here, says Shadow? Thank you very much for this, Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie says, and Shadow says thank you too. Thanks for covering the trial. The preliminary hearing, people were yelling at me because I said trial in the comments too. I've seen a few young men under the age of 24 getting stuck in the politics, and a tragedy occurs, even here. Sad. Sad, it seems things got worse after COVID. I could say so. Age 20 getting stuck in the politics, and a tragedy occurs, even here. What do you think the tragedy is, Anne-Marie? I guess that's the $1 million question there, right? But this will all help Shadow get his soy-free Hootie snacks. Thank you very much. We got a new member. Wow is the new member. Now she has access to the members-only live streams. I usually do them on Thursday evenings, and they become a Chill&A and a Q&A. So we have a grand old time in there. It's closed to the public. Members only. Shadow appreciates the support. Thank you very much.
I observed Charlie going back, doing some meet and greet with some people, getting some photos taken. He then came underneath the hall flags and went to his tent, and he was there answering questions and talking to individuals that would ask him questions.
The tent you're referring to, is that the tent that we see when it was set up in the courtyard?
Yeah, that white square tent.
The white top?
Yes, he was under that.
Fast forward to about 12:20 or so a little bit after noon, the noon hour. What happened? What did you see and what did you hear?
I heard an individual talking to Charlie, and I happened to kind of glance over the edge of the railing.
I try to be considered, Shadow and I try to be stewards of the truth. You know how some people are stewards of the planet? Well, Shadow and I try to be stewards to the truth, because someone must be. And the trickiest part is a lot of people that say, quote unquote, they are a truth seeker. Well, unfortunately, many of those people can also be manipulators / grifters, and it is unfortunate. But it certainly occurs, and there's certainly a market for it. And that's the other part. Those people would not do this if there wasn't a market for what they were doing. The quickest way to get people to stop is for their business to go belly side up. Oh, no more views, no more attention. Oh, guess what? No one will watch, and then they'll stop making the content. That's how it works.
About that time, I could see the right side of Charlie's shoulder, so not his whole body, because he was underneath the tent, so I could only see probably the right side of his body. He was answering a question, kid asking him a question, and then I heard a shot fired.
Do you know what time that was?
Yes.
What time was that?
12:23.
What did you see?
At that moment, I saw him lean to the left. So
When you say him, you see
Charlie.
Charlie.
So I saw him go to the left because I could no longer see the right side of his body. So he went further underneath the tent to the north.
And again, I fully believe everyone that follows me, that is all they really want, is the truth. Because I have been disagreeable enough of both sides so that the only people that would still remain are people that are okay with that. They're okay if sometimes I have a different perspective than them. It didn't drive them away, although I know there has been certain people it's driven away. But that's okay, because if that's all it takes, then they're not really the best fit for the community anyway. But the people who are here, they know, I think they know and trust me to be at least reasonable, even if they disagree with me, right? In my streams, I break down my thoughts. I break down why I think what I do. And I think the people appreciate that. And they might ultimately disagree with my conclusion, but at least they can see the process of how I got there.
Side of the tinsel left.
Okay. Can you describe the reaction of others that were there?
Yeah, so then everybody started getting up and starting to run in more of a chaos kind of situation. At that moment, I recognized it as gunfire. I left my post, which was right there on the south end of the hall flags. I proceeded to between right where the fugal and the hall flags meet. There's some outside stairs that I was starting to run down. As I was trying to get down to the bottom of the stairs, people are running up, people are laying down on the steps. I'm trying to jump over people to get to the bottom of the stairs so I can help stop an individual that's probably shooting.
What happened next?
By the time I got to the bottom of the stairs, I was informed on the radio that we had a shooter in custody. So I thought at that moment, I was like, oh, that was kind of fast. Obviously, it was closer range probably because we had an individual in custody. Another officer came on, said we had an individual in custody. So I decided to, since the threat is gone, now I can assess for anybody that's injured and start looking for any medical needs that's needed at that moment.
Let me say something real quick. Running a business is tough enough, right? Why make it harder doing all these things? 2 people were arrested in the immediate aftermath of this shooting. One of them was a man in his 70s named George Zinn.
Wow, you don't see this clip too often, but this is what happened right after the shooting. Look at the mass chaos here.
who allegedly yelled that he'd shot Kirk, was arrested. It was announced that a second person.
Because there's the thing, when you hear shots like that, you don't know if there's more shots coming. You don't know if it's going to be like a Vegas shooting or a Florida nightclub shooting. You just don't know. So it is a scary situation.
Was also detained, but soon released. And Officer Bagley testified that when he went to the top of this building overlooking.
Oh, thank you very much for this super chat, Sweet Caroline and Flock of Black Sheep. Shadow and I really appreciate it. We love your search for truth and your regard for nuance and context, Jared and Shadow. Well, that is ultimately our goal here. I've been thinking more about that too, Sweet Caroline, what my purpose and mission here is in the channel. And the more I think about it and pray on it, I think some of it is just to give my thoughts on some of these controversial matters in a way that is reasonable, that cuts through the BS. I think it's one of my missions. Now, there's other missions, of course, I think I have where I share about toxic relationships, my experience with it, being on the autistic spectrum, some of my experience with that, interviewing people about the vast amount of topics I have a decent knowledge in. I think all of that's part of the purpose, radical self-respect. But I've been trying to make sure I get more intentional about it. So thank you very much, Sweet Caroline and Flock of Black Sheep. Hopefully things are going well for you over there. I know you've gone through the rough time recently. So the Flock of Black Sheep sends you good vibes too, as does Shadow.
Looking the amphitheater, he realized the shooting may have actually been the work of a sniper.
To me, when I got up there and I could see this disturbance in gravel, to me it looks like a sniper pad, a person that has been laying in a prone position, and you've got markings of elbows, knees, and feet to where somebody was in the line of sight of where Charlie's tent was. Then I realized that we probably didn't have our shooter in custody. From that moment, I asked dispatch to get on the camera system and to see if anybody was on top of the Losi building during the time of the incident.
Now, like at a trial, this is one of the advantages of a preliminary hearing as opposed to, a grand jury, which can indict. The defense has the opportunity to cross-examine the prosecution's witnesses. And one of Robinson's defense attorneys questioned Officer Bagley about the department's preparedness leading up to the Turning Point event.
And do you know how many UVU officers you guys employ normally?
There was 15.
And do you know how many were assigned to cover that event that day?
That were assigned to cover it. There was 6 of us there was patrol 1 and then 5 others that were there with the chief.
Did you all have an idea there were going to be thousands and thousands of people there? Or was that a surprise to you?
Had an idea.
And you only had 5 officers?
6, yes.
6, I'm sorry, I'm counting you, I was
Yes.
thinking. And of those 6 officers, are you all armed? Do you carry weapons?
Yes.
What type of weapons do you carry?
Glock pistols.
And was there any use on campus of, I think they're called magnetometers, but the machines you walk through at TSA in the airport where it checks to see if you're carrying anything metal, what we all had to go through to get in the courtroom. Were there any machines like that set up or being used on campus that day?
No.
And as far as you know, were there any drones that were flying above campus that day?
Not that I know of.
No drones. That was a big question.
And did anyone ever talk to you about covering anything near or on top of or in the Losi building? Were you ever assigned that area before the shooting?
No,
Do you know who was?
I don't.
And when you got up to the roof that afternoon, was anybody around that was law enforcement?
No.
Nobody on the roof?
No.
Nobody on the stairway?
No.
Nobody on the walkway?
No.
Okay. And in the state of Utah, are Is a campus a gun-free zone? Are students allowed to have guns on campus?
It's an open carry state, so yes.
And did you see anybody that was armed that day other than law enforcement?
I did not see.
Were you aware of whether Mr. Kirk had his own security team present there with him?
Yes.
Did you communicate with any of those people?
I saw one individual that was on top of the hall flags right next to me. Yes.
Okay. And that was before the shooting.
Yes. And then I saw several down in the crowds and down by him. Yes.
And were you aware of whether that person was armed either?
I was aware he was armed.
Okay.
Makes me wonder, they're going to say it was such a chaotic event. Do we really know what was going on? In the hours after the shooting, law enforcement allegedly found this bolt-action hunting rifle wrapped in a towel in a wooded area, as well as these cartridge cases that were reportedly engraved with words.
Now, some of the big controversy is they're saying, how the heck did he disassemble the gun right afterwards? And again, what I heard was he didn't disassemble the entire thing. I heard there was a couple screws he undid at the time. And they also said, well, why is Lance's DNA on the towel and the screwdriver? But again, if they're living together, that would make some of that make sense. But let's see.
That were connected to memes and pop culture. Very, very specific. And the FBI announced that it was using facial recognition to try to track down the shooter. But when that proved to be unsuccessful, investigators then released surveillance photos of a person that they now claim is Tyler Robinson. And in around 36 hours after Kirk was killed, Robinson reportedly turned himself in. He was indicted on 7 counts, the most serious of which is aggravated murder. Several of the counts also have aggravating factors attached, like alleged targeting and committing a violent offense in the presence of a child. Now, importantly, Robinson has not entered a plea. Okay, so to talk about some of the biggest moments of the preliminary hearing and what we can expect next, I want to bring on litigator Rich Schoenstein, good friend of the show, good friend of mine. Rich, I'm so happy to have you on because there's so many things I want to talk about. You know, it's not just, I mentioned at the top, not just if there's going to be enough evidence for this case to move forward towards trial, but also has enough been shown to dispel the conspiracy theories out there? Because there have been a lot of issues, particularly brought up by Charlie Kirk's family, Erica Kirk, about transparency. So first, I just want to go into this. Where we sit right now, we're recording this Friday morning. There isn't a decision from the judge yet. I believe there's even more testimony that's going to happen. But having said it, if you were sitting right now, do you think the prosecution has presented sufficient evidence at this point for the case to move forward towards trial?
Yes, no doubt. I have no doubt on that. I think 100% this case is going to trial.
What stands out to you? What are the pieces of evidence that you say, my gosh, I mean, there is sufficient probable cause to support these charges?
Multiple alleged confessions.
Those are the
tracking of his whereabouts in a manner that seems consistent with him having been in the area. Some DNA evidence, but really multiple alleged confessions would get you probable cause.
And I want to get to that in a minute when we talk about Lance Twiggs, but the DNA I find to be fascinating. You know, they talk about how there is DNA linking him on the towel, on the trigger of the bolt-action rifle, right? Potentially the casings. Now you hear the defense fighting back about that. They say, well, wait a minute, you know, it's not definitively him. Could it be touch DNA? They may have something to say, well, why is Lance Twiggs' DNA also on the towel? You're getting a semblance also of what the defense may argue if this goes to trial, right? What do you make of those counter arguments regarding the DNA?
So I think those are good arguments at trial. If this was a DNA only case, I think it might be a bit of an uphill battle. I think the defense would be in it at trial. I still think there'd be probable cause, but I think the defense could have something to say about that and cast enough reasonable doubt that the DNA gets you there to sort of deal with that part of the case. But then there's the rest of the evidence.
Yeah, there's the rest of it. And again, just something to make clear, this is a much lower standard. This is a much lower standard by which the court has to find, is there sufficient probable cause to move forward? It's not beyond the reasonable doubt. It's much, much lower. And I want to ask you one other thing that I thought was interesting. The bullet casings that were apparently found at this crime scene had engravings, and these were specific messages. And they have linked it or potentially linked it to this Dremel tool that was apparently found at Tyler Robinson's home. It had, they also apparently found the same kind of ammunition at the shooting scene in his home. I actually spoke to Joseph Scott Morgan about that, and he thinks that there's going to be a specific expert to match the engravings to handwriting, which I think is really interesting. But that's something I don't even know if is getting that much attention, right? The engravings on the casings on top of, like you said, the surveillance, the DNA, the potential confessions. I thought that was interesting too.
It is interesting, and it's not quite, it doesn't have quite the oomph of the confession or the DNA evidence, so it doesn't get the same attention. But certainly the circumstantial evidence, if you just look at it as circumstantial evidence, there were engravings on the casings, and then you found in his apartment similar casings and engraving equipment. That circumstantial evidence that coupled with some other evidence could get you to probable cause. Now, if Joseph Scott Morgan, who you and I both know and trust is right about the evidence at trial, maybe they can match that up even more clearly, and that would help meet the burden of proof at trial.
One of the big points of conversation from this past week is because we kind of knew what the evidence was going to be, but now we're seeing it in a preliminary hearing, is the defense really going to, Tyler Robinson going to want to take this to trial, right? Like you're starting to see what the defense's arguments are. My opinion, it's like, oh, it was a chaotic scene. How do you know he's definitively the shooter? They arrested someone else at one point. The surveillance footage looks a little grainy. DNA is questionable. Arguments to make a trial, but are they looking at this and are they going to have an honest conversation with Tyler Robinson? Listen, your best bet right now, you plead guilty. We try to take the death penalty off the table. Is that what you think is going to happen after? And I don't know when the judge will come back with the decision on if this goes forward to trial. It might actually take a little bit because I think there's a briefing schedule too. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think they're doing briefing and argument in September. So you're not going to get a decision probably till October. I think there's a pretty good chance there'll be a plea negotiation. We've talked about this before. There's always a plea negotiation. And the question to me is, are the prosecutors willing to take the death penalty off the table in exchange for a guilty plea?
You think they are?
Right.
You think they would in this case?
I don't know, because this case is so politically charged. There's that whole element of it that takes it out of the ordinary. In a case like this is a single murder case by a young person. So to me, it is the kind of case where you would take the death penalty off the table if you could get a guilty plea and a life prison sentence. That would seem to me to be a fair exchange. It would save you the cost and burden and risk of a trial. It would save the family from having to go through all of that again. It would get finality. It would get an adequate punishment. So and I'm not a death penalty person anyway. I don't love the death penalty anyway. So I'm a little bit jaded by that. But to me, that would be a fair exchange. I just don't know, because of the circumstances of this case, because of everything behind the scenes, if that's something the prosecutors are willing to do. If they say no, we're going to ask the jury for the death penalty, then I don't think his defense team has any choice but to try to defend.
Yeah, and look, a couple of things that I think about that. One, as much as this
Shadow says this guy's got quite the head of hair for someone that looks to be around 60 plus years old. How about that?
What happened to Charlie Kirk is absolutely heinous, and you can understand.
Oh, hark the herald angels sing. Glory to the sweet Caroline and the flock of black sheep. Thank you so much, sweet Caroline. What I don't understand is, why did he hand himself in but then plead not guilty? Well, correction, I don't think he's made a plea yet. He hasn't said guilty or not guilty. So, but I do agree with, I don't know why he would turn himself in. I don't know. I think his parents had something to do with it. But even so, why? And how did they know that quickly? It is interesting. But it's not something that I would have thought. I don't know. You're going to do that, and then you're just going to give up your entire life if you actually did it? I don't know. Doesn't really add up to me either, sweet Caroline. But thank you very much for that.
Why prosecutors want to throw the book at who they believe did this, sparing the family from the pain of this. Look, even this 4 or 5 day preliminary hearing has been incredibly difficult for the family. The judge winced when seeing the shooting of Charlie Kirk. You want to put jurors through that and have to see all that again? It's a consideration. Now, even if this goes forward to trial, and even if you get a death qualified jury, it doesn't necessarily mean they would vote in favor of the death penalty. I always look at the Parkland school shooter case. That was a jury with evidence was really bad, and they still said, life in prison. But I do want to talk about arguably one of the most impactful parts of this whole hearing. Thursday, the judge saw this recorded deposition of Lance Twiggs. This is Robinson's romantic partner.
So this is recorded deposition by Lance Twiggs, and it's pretty damning for Tyler Robinson, by the way. It doesn't seem like Lance is trying to protect Tyler at all.
Now, Twiggs reportedly confirmed to officials that he sometimes went by the name Luna with certain friends and associates, including Robinson. And the Utah State Bureau of Investigation agent Brian Davis testified about these 2 interviews that Twiggs did with officials. Take a look.
Are you familiar with an individual named Lance Twiggs?
Yes, I am.
And who is he in regards to this investigation?
He's the roommate of Tyler Robinson.
Was he interviewed as part of this investigation?
He was.
How many times?
2 times.
When was the first time?
The first time was the early morning hours of September 12th, and that occurred at St. George Police Department.
Do you know if his phone was taken from him?
It was.
When did that happen?
So it was during that interview with FBI at St. George Police Department. They conducted an interview of him, and then he provided his phone. He did it voluntarily also, provided it to those agents.
And that would have been on September 12th, 2025?
Correct.
You mentioned a second interview of Mr. Twiggs? Okay, so for any statements made during the interview.
No, a fascinating experiment would be Miss Candace Owens. Imagine if Miss Candace Owens was Tyler Robinson's defense attorney. What do you think she would be saying in the same situation? What would she be challenging that the prosecutor is bringing up? How would she do so? And maybe that question is more relevant in the actual trial. But wouldn't that be fascinating to see, right? Okay, Candace, how would you do it differently? How would you play this entire thing differently? And that might even be a better question to ask of Baron Coleman, by the way, considering Baron Coleman was actually a lawyer, or is actually a lawyer. Actually, I shouldn't say was or is. I don't know if he's still active. Is Baron Coleman active?
Interview, they're given immunity for that, but they're not generally prohibited from being potentially prosecuted outside of that interview. Is that fair?
That's my understanding, yes.
Was Mr. Twiggs given use immunity?
Yes, he was.
The April 20th, 2026 interview was being taken in lieu of him having to come and testify at the preliminary hearing?
Yes, it was. Yes, he was.
And there was a lot of back and forth about whether this deposition video would even be played, whether parts of it would be cut out, redacted. And in fact, members of Charlie Kirk's family specifically requested that the full interview be shown in open court. They were represented by their own attorney in this case, but Judge Tony Graff ruled against that motion.
I've been very hesitant to speak up at these proceedings. We understand it's the state, the defense, and the judge. You're all doing your job. But I feel as if we need to. I want to be clear as to what the Kirk's family's position is on all of this. The Kirk family believes strongly that if the evidence is being admitted in this preliminary hearing, it should be made public for the world to see. No redactions. This court has tools at its tools at its disposal to make sure the defendant receives a fair trial. You'll use them if you find that you need to. That's it, Your Honor. To not be transparent here, to not be open, to not let the world see what happened will create doubt and distrust in the judicial system. And that's not what anybody wants. That's not what any of us believe should happen here. And we'd ask the court to consider the position of the family in making its ultimate decision.
part of the reason in responding to the media, and it's an important point, and to the representative for victim representative Erica Kirk, is I recognize the importance of transparency, and it is a fine line. I'm balancing all these competing rules, constitutional rights, as well as transparency, and sometimes it is an imperfect balancing act, but I'm trying to act in the interest of justice in making this balance.
This judge, he looks like a cross between Hans Landa and Jonathan Haidt. Anyone know who Jonathan Haidt is? But look up Jonathan Haidt and look up Hans Landa. And it's like if those two crossed, it would be Judge Tony Graff.
Act and for transparency to actually be transparent.
So the judge determined, yes, the interview would be played, but some redactions. Rich, go back to my other point. This case, this preliminary hearing is not just about, is there enough evidence to go forward towards trial? It is also about, and I have to wonder if there's a court considering this, how do you balance the constitutional rights of the defendant to a fair trial? Don't put too much out there that would, affect the potential jury pool. But at the same time, there are so many conspiracy theories out there. There is so much chatter. There is so much misinformation from, Tyler Robinson. Yes, he's innocent unless proven guilty, but they say, oh, he's a fall guy. He's a patsy. This was the work of a foreign government or entity. Has there been enough so two parts to my question. One, what do you make of this decision by the judge in showing the Lance Twiggs video? And two, do you feel, from everything you've seen so far, that enough has been shown to potentially dispel the conspiracy theories out there?
Those are both great questions. So let's start with the first one. I was a little surprised. This Lance Twigg interview was much more substantive than I thought it was going to be. I thought the purpose of this was going to be to authenticate text messages where Tyler Robinson allegedly confessed to the crime. But this was substantive. This was about their relationship. This was about what did Tyler Robinson do this day. This was about him allegedly confessing. It was
the way this angle is, it does make it look like it's not Tyler, but if you actually really look at it, you take off those glasses do really change how you would look. But I could see it being him. I could see it. This one on the right, though, it looks different, right? It does just look different somehow. But if you were to actually take off the glasses, you'd probably see that it's him. But I understand why people aren't convinced by these.
very substantive testimony. And of course, at trial, you could.
Nanny Goat has gifted the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect membership. So whoever the lucky soul is, whoever the YouTube Lords of Random decide, will be a member. And now you get access to the members-only live streams that are Chill&A's and Q&A's. Miss Kim, let me know who gets this, because I can't see. So Zip, apparently. And unfortunately, I don't know who Zip is. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine headed my way. Zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay.
Never present it like that. You could never show a video of a witness testifying. You have to bring him in and put him on the stand, and he has to be subject to cross-examination. And that's what the defense said here. The defense said if they want to put Lance Twigg on the stand, they ought to bring him in and put him on the stand. And the judge said, no, it's only a preliminary hearing. We're only establishing probable cause. They can do it this way. And I was a little uncomfortable with that because, every headline this morning says Tyler Robinson confessed to murder. That's what the New York Times, everybody else, those are the headlines now. This was the defense's point. You let the guy go on the stand by pre-recorded video testimony, not subject to cross-examination, and now it's been picked up by the world and treated as if it is, solid evidence. We didn't even have a chance to cross-examine the guy.
Well, I mean, I'll also push back because I remember the screenshots from the video of the phone, right, where he's showing the phone of the conversation that he purportedly had with Tyler Robinson. And in those messages, Tyler Robinson is allegedly confessing. So even despite what he testified to, despite what he said in that interview, and I'm going to play a bit of it right now, you can look at this and say, that's the confession. That's the confession, the text messages.
Yeah, I think that what the prosecution is going to argue here is he confessed multiple times in multiple ways. And that's what is really going to buttress the confessions. This is not just some off comment he made.
Right.
This is something repeatedly. In fact, in the exchange he has on Discord, he's like, no, guys, it really was me.
I'm sorry.
He's arguing.
Yes, apparently he confessed in Discord too. Chatty Cathy, thank you so much for this, Chatty Cathy. I love the challenge coming into a preliminary and being able to get all aspects from everyone. So cool. I hope that you and Shadow are super. Shadow and I are always super duper, Chatty Cathy. And Shadow says thank you very much because this will help him get some more soy-free hootie snacks. Shadow, as we know, very hormone and testosterone conscious. And remember back in the day, I used to talk about Shadow. I would catch Shadow watching, what the hell's his name? Clavicular. We haven't heard too much about Clavicular lately. But I've decided, I should probably reach out to him. I could probably help young Clavicular. Thank you very much for that, Chatty.
With that,
like even when it was like a conversation like this, you're joking, right? This is it. No, I did it. I'm sorry. Tell you what, Rich, put that to the side about the conspiracy theory because I just want to play a little of this Lance Twigg's testimony, and let's just keep this question in mind about it, whether enough has been shown to dispel potential conspiracy theories. So this is some of what Tiggs had to say in that recorded interview. Take a listen.
Do you know Tyler Robinson?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do.
And this is the same Tyler Robinson that's been charged with the shooting of Charlie Kirk?
Yes.
And would you say when you first met Tyler?
I think it was 2023. I've known him longer than that, though. That was, I think, the first time I met him in person.
Okay. And will you describe your relationship with Tyler when you first met him anyway?
When I first met him, I didn't know him super well. He was just a new roommate. So I knew he knew my friend group and I knew he liked playing games, but that's about it when we first, when he first moved in.
Okay. And then at some point, your relationship progressed to something more than just roommates, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
When was that?
I think we started dating 2 or 3 months after he moved in.
Okay. What time did you get up on September 10th?
Probably like 12 to 1 p.m.
You didn't have to work that day?
No.
And did you hear from Tyler? Did he call or text you before then?
No, he sent that message in the group chat I mentioned, but he didn't message me directly at all that day.
Okay. When did you first hear from him on September 10th?
It was at 11 o'clock with that automated message.
Okay, 11 p.m.
Yeah.
He asks you here, remember how I was engraving bullets? Was he engraving bullets before this?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly when, but he had said he was planning to go hunting with his family. And he asked me if we had a Dremel because he said he wanted to engrave messages on bullets. And I just told him where Dremel was and told him to make sure he doesn't set off a bullet on accident in the house. But I didn't really think about it until then.
How long before September 10th was this that he asked about the Dremel?
I don't remember because he'd been talking about the hunting/camping trip for a couple months. But I don't remember when he was specifically asking to engrave the bullets.
When did you first see him on September 11th? So this is the day after the shooting?
Yeah, I saw him when I woke up. Like I said, he was up and around doing a lot of stuff around the house. And then I think I saw him after that message where I said I'll come home and say I'm doing laundry, because I didn't want him going to my parents' house right then when he said there was probably cops outside. So I went back home and it was just him there, and I said bye to him, and then he drove off. So I just went back to my parents' house.
So he acted erratically. Was he pacing? Was he just sitting down, relaxing?
No, he was walking around a lot.
Right, and that's within the home.
Mm-hmm.
And did he talk about what he had done?
Didn't go into detail. I just asked him in person if what he said was true the night before, and he said it was. I started crying a little bit and said he wishes he hadn't done it, and then kept going around and just doing stuff, I think, to keep himself busy or distracted or something.
Okay. Did he talk about what he was going to do next?
And eventually said that he would talk to his parents or turn himself over.
Okay. And when you left, was that how you left, understanding that he was going to turn himself in or go to his parents' house?
Yeah, and I didn't really want to be at our apartment while any of that was happening, regardless of what went down.
Did you and he ever talk about politics?
He did more than me. I didn't really, still don't really keep up with politics very much. He'd usually talk about stuff he heard on the radio on his drive to work in like their work car, since it sounds like their whole crew went in the same car most of the time. But I wouldn't say super consistently, because it wasn't a topic I really contributed much on.
What about Charlie Kirk? Did he ever talk about Charlie Kirk?
I personally had never heard him talk about Charlie Kirk before specifically.
Okay. How about political issues? So did you ever talk about gender identity issues and LGBTQ rights?
No, not really. Usually if he did talk about politics stuff, it was relating to Trump or current like policies being
So, Ann, what I'm curious about is what is in that Nate Eaton video from East Idaho News. Is there something specific about it?
like issued or voted on.
Now, according to a report from Fox News, Twiggs was at one point under FBI protection, and he has since left the state of Utah. Okay, give you an idea. He was also granted, by the way, use immunity, Rich. So use immunity, he can't be prosecuted for what he said in that interview. I guess he needed to be granted that or protected in that way because there was a period of time when he didn't come forward, right, with information once he got it.
Yeah, he could take the fifth. He could take the fifth and not say anything. So they gave him use immunity so that they can't use the testimony he gave, but he hasn't been given transactional immunity. I do get the sense that the authorities don't view him as having been a co-conspirator or as having aided and abetted or as having culpability here because of the way that they've treated this entire thing. So they allowed this video to be played. It was played in open court. And then you had sort of the strange interplay where the judge is saying some parts of it have to remain under seal, and the victim's family is saying, no, we want to see the whole thing. And I understand their feelings in that regard. And I understand this is an extremely difficult situation for them, but that's not who really gets to make the decisions about what evidence is shown at trial and what isn't.
I have to tell you, I don't think I've ever seen, and I'm not saying wrong or right, I just don't think I've ever actually seen a victim's family's, have an attorney go in court and make the argument, show everything to the media, show everything to the world. That says something about what they're going through. It says something about this case that they needed to do that.
We were saying a few minutes ago that one of the benefits of a plea deal would be to spare the victim's family going through a trial, but they seem to want it all out there in the open. When maybe they wanted the trial,
right.
Which is different than some. But so I'll focus for a second on your ultimate question, which is this enough to dispel conspiracy theories? And my answer is going to be no, because conspiracy theories sell. So there's going to be some joker on the internet who says what really happened is Charlie Kirk was attacked in the basement by a dog, and it's all a conspiracy to set up this guy. There's going to be people who still say the investigation wasn't thorough enough. There had to be other people involved. There are still going to be people out there pushing those narratives.
100%. But those who try to be credible, those who say, I'm looking at this every day, X, Y, Z, I think they're the things missing from what I'm seeing so far, or points to an alternative suspect, or points to him falsely confessing. Going back to this, Agent Davis read through these purported text messages between Twiggs and Robinson after the shooting. And according to Fox News, by the way, Erica Kirk could be heard crying in the gallery. Let me play that.
If you could read a little more than halfway down where it begins Wednesday, 11 p.m., will you start reading underneath that?
Yes. So this would have been from Tyler. It says, drop what you're doing, look under your keyboard.
And I apologize. Let me stop you there. How do you know that that message would have been from Tyler Robinson?
That's just, so any of the messages in gray would be from Tyler, and messages in blue would be from Lance. It's just the way the iPhone distinguishes the messages. And also Lance.
So they're seeing this in court, but it's blurred out for everyone else because the judge doesn't want people not in the courtroom seeing it.
Lance in his interview also acknowledges that, who was saying what.
And up at the top, who do we see that this thread is between?
Tyler.
All right, sorry to interrupt you. So read that again, starting from look under the keyboard.
So after that, then Lance responds, he says, what? And then he says, you're joking, right? And then Tyler says, I tried to delete that.
We could scroll down to page 2. And if you can continue reading along.
Okay. Then Tyler says, I'm still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you. And then Lance replies, you weren't the one who did it, right? And Tyler says, I am, I'm sorry. Lance says, I thought they caught the person. And then Tyler says, no, they grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing. I'd planned to grab my rifle from the drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering.
We could scroll down to page.
So the one thing to say about Erica is, I think, unfortunately for Erica, she just doesn't come across as a likable person. I think it's that plus the fact that she's a little bit awkward. And I think that combination is enough. I think it's enough to make her off-putting. Now, that being said, I don't really think she was in on it, though. I think more than one thing can be true at the same time. And I think both of those things can be true. I think I totally get why she's off-putting to people because it seems like she's kind of fake. I mean, she seems fake, like she's LARPing emotions and awkward, and she took right over after he died. All these things that make her just unlikable. But that being said, being unlikable doesn't mean you were in on it. Both of those things can be true. And so, but also, I'll say this too. Considering that I don't think she's in on it, I think people have been a little unfair to her. Not everyone, but some people have been a little cruel and unfair to her. Because imagine, you're not in on it, you've just lost your husband, and now there's a big group of people that are saying, actually, you are in on it and you did it. You're part of it. And you sold him out his legacy. I mean, that's got to suck, right? Imagine you're innocent and that's how people are treating you. That does have to suck. But that being said, I totally get why people are off-put with her. Shadow and I totally get it. Months ago, we went over this too. Months and months ago now. But my friend Kelly and I, we talked about it.
3. Continue reading.
Lance says, why? And Tyler says, why did I do it? And Lance says, yeah. Tyler says, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I'm able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything in the news.
And part of it, Erica could be narcissistic. She might even be autistic for all I know, considering how awkward she is. But either one of those could also be true.
News about them finding it. We'll update you shortly, or sorry, we'll update you by midnight. And then Lance says, all right, stay safe. How long have you been planning this?
Scroll down a little bit, please, Kimberly.
And Tyler replies, a bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there is a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it.
We can scroll down to page 4 and continue reading about halfway down. I'll stop you about halfway down.
This is while they were spot, but I don't want to chance it while they were parked there. If they'd found it, I imagine there would be more commotion. Again, I'm sorry for roping you into all of this. You shouldn't have to worry about this. And Lance replies, does anyone else know? Tyler says, not to my knowledge.
All right, I'll stop you there.
Okay, so Lance says, was your change of clothes there, or was that also gone? Or did you bring those with you originally? Anyway, you could replace the gun, or would he notice? Then Tyler says, only thing I left was the rifle wrapped in a towel. I'll bet that canine sniffed it out. Little snitching. Replace it, unlikely. I don't fully know what the gun was because it was old and Gramps did some modifying. There was a 4-digit serial on it. God only knows who it's registered to. Hopefully some dead guy who gave it to Grandpa. And he continues, remember how I was engraving bullets? The messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notices bulge, you don't.
I think it was also very off-putting for people that she was immediately in the public's eye, taking over Turning Point, as opposed to giving it 6 months or something to let the air cool a little bit, be with your kids because they just lost their father. I think it's a combination of several things that really rub people the wrong way, I think. And then how she was dressing in some of those too. I don't like criticizing women how they dress, but some of it seemed a little much considering the situation. I'm thinking about Black Leather Pants Day.
WU on Fox News. I might have a stroke.
And then continue. I'll stop you in a moment.
He says, all right, I'm going to have to leave it. That really sucks.
Let me stop you there. And then if we could go on to the next page, page 9. And do you see the first blue message we see on page 9? Can you start there?
Yes. So Lance says, do you need it for hunting? And Tyler says, no, my dad wanted to use a high caliber for the rifle hunt. Judging from today, I say Gramps' gun does just fine. IDK. I think that was a 2K scope. Lance says, geez. And then Tyler says, OMW home 3.5 hours. Lance says, drive safe. And then Tyler says, delete this exchange.
And I'll stop you right there.
Rich, okay, full picture here. You said, of course, there'll be jokers who capitalize it. Of course, 100%. But is there anything from what you're seeing that someone can make a legitimate, reasonable argument? Wait a minute, there's something missing here. There's something a little shady here. There's something I'm not seeing here. There's some, I think, there's evidence someone else did it. There's someone else directing Robinson. He's falsely confessing. He doesn't mean what he's purportedly saying. Again, he's innocent unless proven guilty, but tell me, you're looking at the evidence like me.
I'll tell you, the only thing that gives me any sort of pause would be some of the testimony from the roommate. I think he testified that they never talked about Charlie Kirk.
Right.
that seems odd given the theory of the case.
Or LGBTQ rights. They never talked about it, apparently.
Right. That sort of raised an eyebrow, but other than that, I didn't see anything. Those Discord chats back and forth don't point to culpability of anybody else, and you better believe the investigators have been through those chats, with a fine tooth comb, looking at everything, looking at every person involved. There's certainly no evidence that his family was involved.
Right.
There's no credible evidence I've seen of anybody else being involved. The only question would be Lance Twiggs.
Look, the argument that I would make against that would be, how many times do we cover cases where somebody commits a heinous crime, came out of nowhere? This is somebody who never mentioned anything, somebody who didn't have a criminal history. Like, did anybody have any idea that Brian Kohberger was going to brutally kill 4 complete strangers, right? I mean, and it goes back, everybody's different. Gilgo, I mean, this guy was living a whole separate life. But I do want to talk about something else. There was this letter that was apparently found underneath this keyboard, and Robinson had allegedly taken a photo of that note before it was eventually burned. And while the letter itself wasn't shown to the court,
Shadow and I are going to send good vibes to Chatty Cathy's niece, who's going through a rough time. We suggest the rest of the flock of black sheep do the same. Lots of love and good vibes sending to Chatty Cathy's niece.
it was detailed in this search warrant, according to Utah outlet KSL-TV. And according to the warrant, the letter says, quote, Luna, if you're reading this per my text, then I am so sorry. I left the house this morning on a mission and sent an auto text. I am likely dead or facing a lengthy prison sentence. I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I took it. Now, KSL-TV also reports that Robinson...
That's an alleged letter by Tyler Robinson there. Let's look at it. Hey, guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all this. I'm surrendering through a sheriff friend in a few moments. Thanks for all the good times and laughs. You've all been so amazing. Thank you all for everything. An alleged text from Tyler Robinson. And again, if that's real, it seems pretty damning to me.
I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all this. I'm surrendering through a sheriff friend in a few moments. Thanks for all the good times and laughs. You've all been so amazing. Thank you all for everything. And after sitting in court and seeing all of the evidence that one could argue is piling up against him, now it becomes a question, what is Robinson going to do? But I just go back to this. I'm sure people out there would make the argument, well, isn't it convenient? He's confessing so thoroughly and so detailed when he doesn't have to. But it also doesn't strike me as odd that he would have done this, right? It seems like if I'm listening to the prosecution's narrative, very troubled person. Maybe he was, you listen to Lance Twiggs' testimony, he was conflicted after doing this, although he doesn't appear to be showing much emotion in court right now. But it wouldn't be so strange that someone would take ownership over doing something like this and making a statement like this. It's kind of, guys, Luigi Mangione vibes. Again, he's innocent unless proven guilty, but I wouldn't be surprised if he confessed, no?
Yeah, I could see it happening. Right, it's hard. I can't ever wrap my head around the thought process of somebody who would commit a crime like this. Why they would do it in the first place, how they could do it, I don't understand.
Yeah.
So when you get into the details of it, would he leave a note like that? Sure, because I don't understand what he's doing in the first place. He could leave. The thing about the note that stood out to me goes back to what I was saying before. He says, I have an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I did it. And Twiggs says they never talked about Charlie Kirk before. That's what makes the note a little odd to me.
Yeah.
Because then it just totally comes from nowhere. Why are you taking out, why are you doing that? That's not something we've ever discussed. That is a little bit odd, but the whole thing, the whole crime, if it happened as alleged, is so disconnected from anything that I can rationalize that I can't imagine it happening that way.
So look, right now we're recording this before the preliminary hearing wraps up. It's supposed to wrap up today, one more day of evidence, but this decision from Judge Graff, it's probably not going to come down right away. There's more arguments.
I would say I'm 99.9% sure it would go to a trial. And then it would just be a matter of, is Tyler Robinson's lawyer going to try to get a plea deal instead of taking it to trial?
There's briefing, as we talked about. Those are scheduled for September. We can get an answer after that. But look, my legal opinion, Rich's legal opinion, it seems this case is going to move forward towards trial. Does become a question, what does Robinson decide to do next? Rich Schoenstein, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure.
All right, so I'll go to this Nate Eaton video real quick to see what's going on here before we wrap it up here.
Video of the person.
And this is East Idaho News. Nate Eaton. Ugh. I hope that video is not copyright music or something.
Tyler Robinson's preliminary hearing is over. Welcome, everybody, to Courtroom Insider. It is July 10th, 2026. I'm Nate Eaton. Thanks for being here after a week of lots of testimony, lots of objections, lots of back and forth, lots of discussion, debate, all of it. A judge will now decide if there is enough probable cause that Tyler Robinson likely shot Charlie Kirk. I say a judge will decide that after both sides submit briefing. So thanks for being here tonight. It's Friday. Hope you're ready for the weekend. We're headed out of town to Island Park. If you've never been to Island Park,
I would say I'm 99.9% sure the judge would rule, yes, there's enough probable cause. We are moving forward. Does anyone not think that? Does anyone think, actually, no, the judge is going to rule there's not enough and there will be no trial? Does anyone think that? Now is the time to speak up. Press 1 if you think that it's not going to go to trial because there's not enough probable cause.
you should go. It's beautiful. Going to spend the weekend up there in nature. So here's the deal. This is the standard that the state has to decide. There's two trains of thoughts or two ways to do things when someone is charged with a crime. You can go the grand jury route, which is a lot more secretive, where people are pulled together. The prosecutor has to present evidence to the grand jury in secret. There's no judge. There's no defense attorneys, nobody. There's no defendant. The public then, the grand jury then decides if there's enough evidence that they should be indicted. That's what happened with Chad and Lori Daybell. So we didn't know a lot of the evidence before. We knew some, but we didn't know a lot. They were then indicted, and then we learned a lot at trial. The other way is to go the preliminary hearing route, which is what these prosecutors in Utah County did, where you have to go before the judge and say, Judge, this person committed the crimes and this is why. And then the judge has to say, okay, you're right. There's enough probable cause that he probably did it, probably cause. This prosecution far and exceeded that in many people's view by presenting multiple witnesses, and then the defense, which I personally have never seen, called in their own witnesses to try and discredit the prosecution. And at the end of the day, today at noon Mountain Time, the court adjourned. Now what will happen is the prosecution has 2 weeks to prepare a brief as to why they feel they've presented enough probable cause and why the judge should carry the case over and schedule a trial. The defense has 2 weeks after the prosecutor files their filing. The defense has 2 weeks to respond and say, no, they did not present enough probable cause that our client did this. This case should not advance. The prosecution has 1 week to rebuttal what they say, the defense, if they choose. And then on September 1st, 2026 at 10 a.m., oral arguments will be held. It'll be much like what we've heard this past week. The prosecution will go, the defense will go, he'll probably let the prosecution go again, and then Judge Tony Graff will say, yes, there is enough probable cause. I set this trial for such and such. or no, the burden has not been met. There is no need for a trial.
The burden has been met. I mean, there'll probably be some people that try to dispute that, but the burden's been met.
And at that point, the state could change the charges, dismiss the charges. They have to do something because there's not there. What will most likely happen, based on everybody I've spoken with, is this will get set for trial, and the trial probably, in my guesstimation, won't happen at least for another year. Fall of 2027, maybe even spring of 2028. The prosecution has said they intend to pursue the death penalty, and because of that, it's more complex. It's a more complicated matter, and I could see this being a 3 or a 4 month trial because it's so complicated. So there's where we stand now. But after this week, prosecution rested, the defense rested, hearing is over. The day began today with a little issue over the camera. Yesterday, I won't spend too much time on this. The camera in the courtroom caught an exhibit on the screen that the judge had said not to live stream, not to broadcast. The issue was it wasn't the camera person's fault. The prosecutor inadvertently, accidentally showed an exhibit that was being reflected on the screen. The camera operator realized that. She panned away after 3 seconds. Back to the gallery, the defense made a big deal about it this morning and said an exhibit was shown that the judge ordered not to be shown. Cameras need to get out. The judge thought about it. He went back in his chambers and reviewed it. It was a note, the note that Robinson had written to Twiggs, allegedly, where he talked about what he did, allegedly, and the contents of that note have been made public in other court filings. We've just never seen the note. Well, it was shown yesterday, and I'm not going to show it here, and we haven't posted it anywhere. But the defense made a big deal that it's out there, and a court order was violated. So the judge came in and he ruled that all exhibits today could not be shown. And going forward at the next hearing in September, once a camera request is submitted, the judge will decide the rules on that. He did not remove the camera from the courtroom. And I have to say, mistakes happen. If the camera person purposely shot the screen, like panned over and zoomed, that would be one thing, but it was a mistake. And so let's hope that he allows cameras to remain in there. The defense is going to fight every single step of the way to keep cameras out. Photo cameras and video cameras, as they have done so far. And they're going to continue to do that. So
it's interesting that the defense wants that. I guess the argument they're going to make is they don't want a tainted jury. But I'm also thinking the people that aren't going to agree with the prosecution's narrative, they would say, "No, that's proof. It's proof that there's some shenanigans going on." You already know what they're going to say before they say it, right?
That happened this morning. Then the final witness was called, a witness who, well, actually, before that, the prosecution stood up and said, "Your Honor, we believe the burden has been met, and we think that the evidence is overwhelming, and we want this to wrap up." Here's what the prosecutor said.
You mentioned, and I quote, "Sometimes you need to take time to save time," close quote. And so that's my purpose for standing up here this morning. We have spent the better part of a day, a little over 5 hours, I believe, hearing from witnesses that the defense has called at this preliminary hearing. And no doubt the defense is entitled to call witnesses at a preliminary hearing as allowed by the rules. But I think it's important that the court remind all parties about the purpose of this hearing. This is a probable cause hearing, as Your Honor has repeatedly stated. The defense has invoked the term reliability many times. And the court, frankly, has found the evidence that's been admitted, the testimony. As a gatekeeper, the court has found it reliable. It's been presented. The exhibits have been found reliable. So any questions of additional reliability are really questions of credibility of the witness and weighing of the evidence. And that is not really what this court engages in at the probable cause standard. And so
This is all couched in the context of a likely forthcoming standing objection that the state may lodge if the testimony is long and drawn out and exceeds the scope of the preliminary hearing, gets into areas of a 702 hearing, possibly even trial. We will lodge this objection, but I wanted to just simply state the authority, Judge.
The judge took note of that, and then the defense called their final witness, Catherine Oliver. She's an ATV DNA section chief. The defense wanted to point out that labs make mistakes. There's issue with them. And the witness agreed. It said that not everything is 100% perfect. She stated that multiple contributors, at least 4, were found on the gun, the weapon, and other evidence as far as DNA is concerned.
Which was a swab from the rifle. You used the elimination sample of Mr. Robinson's father, and you found his DNA on that particular swab, correct?
I would say there's support for inclusion of Matthew Robinson on the sample obtained from the swabs of the bolts of the rifle.
I'm glad you pointed that out. That's, again, consistent.
So yesterday, people were saying, influencers and reporters, the people that were there, they said there was a video that showed Tyler Robinson going up. Now, it's debatable if you can see his face or not, because no one outside of the courtroom is able to see it. So I'll be curious, Linda, where you're able to see that, because as far as I know, people are not allowed to see that yet. But people in the courtroom saw it. And it says what the video shows is Tyler in the prone position the time the shot is fired. Then he gets up, runs across the roof. As he gets to the edge of the roof, he ducks to a crawl and then jumps down. That's what we were told. But again, that's all just secondhand because no one saw it. The only people that saw it were in the courtroom.
With your other testimony, you're talking again about support for inclusion as a possible contributor.
Correct. And
again, not because he's a suspect, but because he's associated with that premise.
Correct. And there would have been a likelihood ratio statistic calculated and to go along with that.
Okay. Could you go to the next page? Similarly, with respect to 1.6, you found again, Matthew Robinson on swap number 1.6 or a profile that indicated he was a possible contributor.
There's support for inclusion of Matthew Robinson.
Okay. And next page, actually go 2 page to page 7. You found support for inclusion of Lance Twiggs on swabs of buttons of a Dremel.
All right. We'll pick the rest of this up tomorrow here because I'm losing some steam on it. A lot of that is what we went over already in the Long Crime Network video and Lawyer Lee's video. But here's what you need to know so far, I would say. I'm 99.9% sure the case is going to go to trial. The only exception to that would be if Tyler's lawyer gets a plea deal instead. Which, considering the evidence, that's not beyond the realm of possibility. Because again, if you don't believe it, you would have to believe that all the evidence they're showing is fake, which would mean there's a lot of people in on some sort of cover-up, is what that would mean. But we will see. As with everything, time will tell. And Jolly, you know what Matt Murphy said? Matt Murphy said, when you're around death so much, it gives you a burning desire to live. Matt Murphy being the homicide prosecutor, of course, the senior deputy district attorney, the former senior deputy district attorney of Orange County, California. That is what it would come down to, Dana. You're right about that. And I just, there's too many moving parts, I think, for that to be the case. And again, there is certainly some tomfoolery in the past. If you look at the beginning of the Vietnam War, you look at the USS Liberty, you look at other things, there's certainly been some shady things. And if you know history, then you would see, yes, we have certainly been lied to before. Honestly, Black people have probably one of the biggest gripes. They were told they were getting their blood tested in the 1930s, and instead they were injected with syphilis to see what would happen to them. And that was a government-run thing. Oh, don't worry. We're just testing your blood. Actually, we're injecting you with syphilis. The Tuskegee experiment, I think is what it was called. Well, just let us know, Linda. Because here's the thing, there's more than one video. Now, as far as I know, the judge is not allowing any pictures of the evidence to be released. People in the courtroom saw it, but people outside of the courtroom are not allowed to see it. So I'd be curious where you saw it. Who believes or even watches Rachel Madcow? Rachel Madcow is good friends with Tucker Carlson. Did you know that? Makes you think that, makes this what it makes me realize. The wealthy folks, the elites, regardless of their political affiliation, they have more in common with each other than they do the people. Rachel and Tucker's friendship is a demonstration of that. Most people don't realize that, but it's the truth. Sort of like I would say Oprah has more in common with Trump than she does the average Black woman. Can you believe it? I believe it. All right, sweet Caroline. Thanks for joining us here this evening. I'm about to wrap it up here too. Miss Kim. Shadow. You make Shadow blush, Miss Kim. Paid $30 million a year to tell us what the Godhead wants us to know. Yes. They're all part of the game. I mean, Shadow and I ultimately see the world through that lens. The elites and the wealthy, they're playing by different rules, and they're playing on a different chessboard. But this is why I also say a lot of the ways they get people to divide, they're really just ways to help the elites by race, social issues, etc. They're great ways to get people that otherwise should probably agree with one another. They're great ways to get them split. And then the wealthy folks, the elites, they just laugh themselves to the bank and say, can you believe it? Can you believe that abortion is dividing so many people? Can you believe that guns is dividing so many people? Can you believe that fill in the blank with whatever social issue, LGBTQ, any one of those things? They love it. They love all those because they're great dividers is what they are. So Shadow and I will always call that out. Now, granted, that doesn't mean you're not allowed to have your opinions on those issues. But what I'm saying is look to the bigger picture. I think those issues are being used as a tool to divide. As Pink Floyd would say, together we stand, divided we fall. Right on, Chatty Kathy. Jolly, have a great night. Kathy, great night. Miss Kim, great night. Bethany, thanks for joining us. Miss Kim, thanks for modding, of course. Jolly, it's always a pleasure to see you here, Jolly. We only wish we would see you more often. Dana, thank you. Mike, thank you. Nanny Goat. I just love saying the word Nanny Goat, don't you? Mike says, I came up on an owl today, and it was on the ground in the middle of the road. He turned his head to me, then he flew up the tree, and I think he turned around and came back. Just an owl story. You know what? It is so rare to see an owl in the wild, but I love that. Shadow and I love owl stories. Have a great night, Anne. And some way, somehow, have a great night too. Phil Bradley is late. You too, Jolly. You as well. Anne says, I always say ideology is one thing and democracy is what people vote for, which include freedom. I agree with that. I agree. That's right, Natty Go. It's a fun thing to say. Chatty Cathy, everyone, Miss Kim, Someway, Shadow and I wish you a pleasant evening. Have a great night, and we'll see you all again soon. More interviews to come.